Your nested folders aren't just messy, they are officially obsolete. For decades, we spent our time building hierarchies for a world that no longer exists. A world defined by physical paper and metal filing cabinets. The assumption was that structure equals findability. We truly believed that if we just nested deep enough, we could organize our way into efficiency. But that assumption is broken. In 2026, work doesn't start with navigation, it starts with context. The file tree was always just a temporary patch for a lack of intelligence, acting as a manual map for a digital wilderness. Now, that map is burning. We are finally killing the directory once and for all. We are replacing the static drive with a living neural network that understands what you need before you even ask for it. Because in reality, the very structure you built to save time is the thing stealing it from you. The 19% navigational tax. We've accepted folder hell as a standard cost of doing business. You walk into a new job, you see a mess of drives, and you just shrug because you think it's part of the work. But the data says otherwise. Research shows that users now spend 19% of their day just hunting for information. That isn't a minor annoyance. It is one full day every single week lost to the file tree. You are paying a 19% tax on your entire workforce just to maintain the illusion of organization. Think about what that tax actually represents. It's the navigational tax. It is the massive cognitive drain of trying to remember where a human 3 years ago decided a specific file belonged. You aren't looking for data, you are trying to telepathically link with a former employee's specific logic. Folders rely on spatial working memory because you have to remember the place. But the human brain is limited, and it only holds 5 to 9 elements at once. When you have 10 levels of nesting, you aren't organized, you are biologically overwhelmed. Your brain wasn't designed to navigate a labyrinth of subfolders named Final V2 Draft. This friction is the primary barrier to creativity in 2026. If it takes you 30 seconds to find the right place for an idea, the idea dies and you lose the spark. You lose the flow. You spend your energy on the container instead of the content. Filing friction is a silent killer of innovation because it forces you to be a librarian when you should be a creator. We've reached a point where the effort to find the file exceeds the value of the file itself. We've built digital graveyards. You save a document into a nested folder, and for all intents and purposes, it ceases to exist. It's gone, and it's buried under layers of logic that no longer apply to the current project. The navigational tax is also a collaborative tax. When you share a folder, you aren't sharing knowledge, you are sharing a puzzle. You are forcing your teammates to learn your specific mental map just to find a slide deck. It's inefficient, and frankly, it's lazy architecture. We've been using the same model since the 1970s, while our data volumes have exploded by a factor of 1 billion. But here's the problem. It's not just about the speed of retrieval, it's about how the system thinks. The folder model assumes that information is static. It assumes a file is a physical object that can only be in one place at one time. But in a modern enterprise, that isn't true. A contract isn't just a file in the legal folder, it's a milestone for the project manager. It's a revenue event for finance, and it's a relationship history for sales. By forcing that contract into a single folder, you are hiding it from everyone else. You are creating a silo by design. You are telling the system that this data has only one dimension. The folder is a cage for context, and it prevents the data from breathing. It prevents the system from seeing the relationships that actually drive the business. We have to stop thinking about where things are. Where is a physical concept. In a digital world, where is irrelevant. What matters is what and who and why. The directory is a relic of a time when we had to walk to a cabinet to get a folder. Today, the data should walk to us. If you are still asking your team to navigate a file tree, you are operating on a 1970s operating system. You are burning 20% of your productivity on a myth. The reality is that the hierarchy is a lie. It's a fragile, manual, and exhausting way to manage the most valuable asset you have. We need to move beyond the tree. We need an architecture that reflects the interconnected reality of 2026. We need a system that doesn't ask us to remember a path, but understands our intent. It's time to stop navigating and start connecting. The collapse of the static hierarchy. The static hierarchy isn't just failing because it's slow, it is failing because it is fundamentally wrong about how information actually works. For decades, we have treated digital files like physical rocks. You pick up a rock, you put it in a box, and that is where it stays until someone moves it. But information isn't a rock, it is a relationship. In the old model, we assume every piece of data is a single point that belongs in folder A or folder B. You are forced to choose. But in the real world of 2026, every document lives in multiple dimensions at once. Take a standard service contract as an example. To your legal team, that file is a liability document, but to the sales rep, it represents a closed deal. Meanwhile, the project lead sees it as a specific set of deliverables. Rigid directories try to force a one-to-one relationship on a many-to-many world, and that is exactly where the model breaks. The very second a file fits into 2 different places, you have already lost. You are forced to make a choice that shouldn't even exist. So what do people actually do? They duplicate the file. They hit save as and put a copy into both folders. Now you have created a ghost. You have two different versions of the truth floating around your system, and they rarely stay the same for long. One gets updated during a late-night meeting, while the other sits in a different folder, slowly rotting. 6 months later, someone finds that old version and makes a $1 million decision based on stale data. The hierarchy didn't organize the information, it just hid the truth. Microsoft Graph and the semantic shift. 2026 isn't about where a file is located. It is about what that file actually means. We are witnessing a fundamental pivot in the architecture of the digital workspace right now. The focus has shifted away from the physical location of a document and moved toward its semantic essence. This is the era of the Microsoft Graph. The graph isn't just a database, it is a unified fabric that connects every person, every meeting, and every document across your entire organization. But the real breakthrough we are seeing in 2026 is the semantic index. We have finally moved beyond the era of simple keyword matching. Traditional search engines only looked for characters. They looked for the word contract, and if you typed agreement instead, they might miss it entirely. Now, the semantic index is processing billions of vectors. Think of a vector as a mathematical representation of a concept rather than just a string of letters. When you save a file, the graph doesn't just record the file name, it maps that document into a multidimensional mathematical space. It understands that the word praised is semantically similar to being elated or excited, which means the system finally understands intent. We are shifting from lexical search to vector similarity. In this new architecture, we replace the rigid folder name with a semantic label. These aren't just tags you have to manually enter yourself. These are topic and purpose identifiers that describe the what of the information. The system analyzes the content, the social signals, and the project context to define what a document actually is. This shift changes everything about how you interact with your data. In the old folder model, you are the seeker. You have to hunt for what you need. In the graph model, the information finds the user. Because the system understands the relationships between people and their work, it can surface the exact document you need before you even realize you need it. It sees that you have a meeting with a vendor in 10 minutes, so it already knows which contracts are expiring and which design drafts were discussed in a recent Teams chat. This is the transition from a library model to a neural network model. In a library, you need a call number and a specific shelf location. If the book is misfiled, it is effectively gone forever. In a neural network, the information is distributed and interconnected. Every piece of data is a node, and every interaction is an edge. The more you work, the stronger those connections become. The Microsoft Graph uses billions of these vectors to cluster related data points together. It creates a map of organizational knowledge that is far more accurate than any manual directory could ever be. It respects your security boundaries, but it breaks down the silos of ignorance that used to hide information. It allows the system to actually reason across your data. When you ask an AI agent for a summary of a project, it doesn't go looking in a project folder. It queries the graph. It pulls the relevant emails, the specific spreadsheet rows, and the recorded meeting transcripts all at once. It connects the dots in real time. The folder becomes a ghost of a previous era. It was just a container for a world where we didn't have the compute power to understand the content. So what's actually happening is a total reversal of the workflow. We are moving from manual filing to automated intelligence. We are moving from a world where humans serve the file system to a world where the file system serves the human. The semantic index represents the end of the lost file era. If the system understands the meaning, the location becomes irrelevant. We have reached a point where the graph is the primary interface for work. Whether you are in Outlook, Teams, or a custom app, you are looking at a personalized slice of this neural network. It is a dynamic, shifting view of your professional world. The hierarchy has collapsed into a web, and in 2026, the web is where the real value is created. We are finally letting the data be as interconnected as the people who created it. SharePoint Premium and the Metadata engine. SharePoint Premium has fundamentally changed what we think of as a site. It used to be a bucket where you threw things in and hoped for the best. Maybe you added a few tags if you were feeling disciplined, but in reality, nobody was ever that disciplined. Manual tagging was a failed experiment because it required humans to act like machines, and we have finally stopped asking people to do what software does better. In 2026, SharePoint Premium acts more like a processing plant. The moment a document hits the system, the engine goes to work without asking the employee to categorize a single thing. It extracts the metadata at the point of entry by reading the invoice and identifying the vendor, the total amount, the tax ID, and the due date. This process transforms a dead PDF into a living data object. The scale of this shift is massive. Processing 500 invoices used to take 1,500 minutes of manual data entry, which adds up to 25 hours of human life wasted on typing numbers into columns. Now, that time investment has dropped to zero because the system does the heavy lifting before the file even lands in a library. The metadata engine has turned the act of filing into a background process that happens while you do real work. This is how we move from a world of drives to a flat, intelligent content fabric. In the old model, you had to know exactly which site and which folder held the finance data, and you had to navigate that hierarchy manually. But when the system extracts the metadata automatically, the folder becomes a redundant container. It is just a legacy wrapper for data that no longer needs a physical home to be found. The graph-based UI and cognitive load. When you change the architecture of the data, you eventually have to change the architecture of the screen. We have spent 40 years looking at lists of files, then lists of folders, and then lists of search results. But lists are a low bandwidth way to consume information because they force your brain to work serially. You read one line, then the next, and then the next, which is an exhausting way to find what you need. In 2026, the interface is finally catching up to the graph. We are moving toward graph-based UIs that are proven to reduce cognitive load by 15 to 30% during complex tasks. This isn't just about looking high-tech or modern. It is about how your brain processes visual information. Think about how you navigate a city. You don't use a list of every street name in alphabetical order. You use a map. A map allows you to see the spatial relationship between points, and it lets you understand the neighborhood of an idea. Graph-based interfaces do exactly this for your digital work. Instead of clicking through a rigid tree structure, you see a web of connections where people, projects, and deadlines appear as nodes in a cluster. This shift leverages what we call perceptual fluency. Your brain is remarkably fast at recognizing patterns, and it is far quicker at that than reading and interpreting file paths. When you look at a visual graph, you can instantly see that a specific document is the center of a major project because it has the most connections, overcoming the adoption barrier. But here's the shift. This isn't just a technical upgrade, it's a cultural one. The biggest obstacle to the graph isn't the API or the vector math, it's folder nostalgia. We have spent our entire careers in the file tree, and because it feels like control, we think it's safe. Letting go of that structure feels like letting go of the work itself. We have been conditioned to believe that if something isn't in a folder, it's lost. For many employees, moving to a transparent architecture feels like being exposed. In a folder-based world, you can hide. You can keep your drafts tucked away in a subdirectory that nobody ever visits. In a graph-based world, the connections are visible. The metadata is active. We have to move from a need-to-know culture to a context-first culture, but this requires a level of trust that many organizations haven't built yet. People worry that if their work is visible before it's finished, they will be judged. They fear the loss of the private sandbox. We are moving from a world of containment to a world of connection. We also need a practical implementation strategy. I use the 80-20 rule for 2026. You keep 80% of your out-of-the-box features for standard collaboration. You don't need to reinvent the wheel for every team chat, but you use the remaining 20%, the custom layer, for graph-enhanced workflows. This is where you build the intelligent nodes that connect your unique business logic to the broader semantic index. This is the precision layer where you define the relationships that matter specifically to your industry. This means we have to stop training people on where to save things. That training is a waste of time. It's teaching people how to use a rotary phone in the age of the smartphone. Instead, we start training them on how to query. We teach them how to interact with the intelligence. We show them how to prompt the system to find the relationships they missed. The transition is a journey, and it's a move from being a filer to being an architect. You aren't just putting a document in a box anymore. You are placing a node in a network. You are contributing to the organizational brain. That shift in perspective is hard. It requires leadership to model the behavior. If the executives are still emailing attachments and asking for the latest version in a specific folder, the graph will fail. The culture will revert to the safety of the silo. You cannot build a neural network if the primary nodes refuse to connect. We have to stop treating information as a secret and start treating it as a resource. It's not about the file anymore, it's about the truth. But the organizations that embrace this will move at a speed that seems impossible to their competitors. They will stop having meetings to find where we are on a project. The system will already show them the current state of play. They will stop losing months of progress when a key employee leaves because the context didn't leave with them. The knowledge stayed in the network. It's the difference between a library and a living mind. It's the evolution of collective intelligence. The directory is dead. It's not coming back. In 2026, your competitive advantage isn't what you store. It's how fast you can connect it. If you are still building file trees, you are just building digital graveyards. You are burying your potential under layers of 1970s logic. Stop navigating, start connecting. The graph is the only way forward. If this changed how you think about your data architecture, follow me, Mirko Peters, on LinkedIn. I'll see you there right now.